so glad to be with you guys. My name is Katherine. I'm with Hope Heals Ministries, and I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia, but spent almost 14 years in Southern California in Culver City, a community near Los Angeles, in Los Angeles. And so I lived kind of right around where probably most of you guys live. So anyway, I am just delighted to get to be with you through the power of technology and seeing you through the screen. So thank you for engaging me. And even though I cannot be with you in person, and I prefer in-person, person-to-person interaction, what a gift that through the power of the internet and technology and all the rest that this message can be shared with you. And through my sharing with you, I pray that you can come to deeper faith and knowledge of the hope of Jesus in your story. And I just so want for you to feel encouraged in your life, in your ministry, and in what you are dealing with, no doubt, today. Times are uncertain, and we need hope of Jesus so desperately. So I'm going to share with you and hopefully encourage your heart for a moment. In case you don't know my story, which is highly likely, again, my name is Katherine Wolf. And in super short fashion, I was a 26-year-old girl, married to my college sweetheart, living in Malibu, California, while my husband was in Pepperdine Law School. And we even had a 6-month-old baby along the way. And out of nowhere, absolutely no warning, no symptoms, no medical history, nothing, I had an extremely massive brainstem stroke and nearly died. And it was from what's called an AVM, which is a malformation of blood vessels that formed when I was in my mother's womb, which I like to say is where I was fearfully and wonderfully made. And that malformation was there, and it grew and ruptured when I was 26 years old, causing the massive brainstem stroke. And I very nearly died. It was extremely serious. And what took me years to recognize and sort of wake up to is that I am severely disabled today. My hand doesn't work, my face is paralyzed, obviously. I cannot walk well, and I have to use a wheelchair. I cannot drive a car, and my body is just extremely messed up. However, the impairments on my body, all of the various disabilities and limitations, are not exactly because I'm a stroke survivor, which is what I'd always thought. I'm a stroke survivor, so that's why I have all these deficiencies. Well, not exactly. It's actually because the wise surgeon made the decision to sacrifice different things in order for my life to be sustained. Do you see that? I think it's a very powerful takeaway in all of our stories, that sometimes the wise and careful surgeon must sacrifice things in order for something else to flourish, something else to come, for life to be sustained. So I did live and do have extreme disabilities, but life's gone on. It has not been an easy journey. I've had very hard situation in the last 12 years. It's been a story of difficult suffering, but also a story of incredible strength. Jesus has been my hope, and a lot has been very hard. My 6-month-old is now, from the stroke, is now 12. And y'all, I went on to have a second baby whose name is John, who's 4 years old. And my husband and I founded a camp for families with disabilities, just like ours, called Hope Hills Camp. Love for you to volunteer. Many people come from California. And yeah, it's been hard but good, which is, I think, all of our stories. The good, hard life, I say, that we are all living versions of the good, hard story. What I want to talk to you about today, however, is a message I really feel like the Lord has imparted for me to share on celebration. Now, I don't really know what to title it, so maybe you can help me. It's either Joyful Rebellion, or Joy Rebel, or Rebel Joyfully, or Celebration Redefined, maybe. Celebration in the midst of the storm, celebration in suffering, suffering strong, and celebrating, I don't know. Basically, you decide whatever most speaks to your soul in this moment. I say title it whatever you want, or wait till the end and then title it what you want to then. But I will be talking about celebrating in context of suffering and celebrating with strength. You know, I've walked with Jesus nearly my whole life. I received Christ when I was 4 years old. Grew up walking with the Lord, never perfectly at all, but walking with Him. And it took a massive stroke and me becoming severely disabled to finally feel the need to redefine everything in my life. Because as we know, on some level we know, now I really know, on some level I've always known, that it isn't what happens to us in life that really matters, is it? It's how we think about it. It's how we remember it. It's how we respond to what's happened. It's how we redefine, how we see, how we intentionally recognize the God winks, we call them in our story. And once my life was upended, completely upended, I found myself more able to live into the upside down kingdom, which is such a powerful and profound thought, that the uncovering of more of who I really was meant my life made more sense to how I should live or something. It's very beautiful. And another takeaway for us all is in brokenness, there is such a clarity, and that's such a gift. I think the inspiration for this message was birthed about 6.5 years ago, actually. And something changed. And I pray it never switches, because I think this is how we all should live. When we look at celebration redefined, it is about celebrating process and not outcome. Write that down. Process, not outcome. It's in the midst of celebration. The truth is, outcomes don't always come, do they? If we're always waiting till the final moment of everything neatly wrapped up with a bow, the reality is we may wait forever and then die and have never celebrated it. The reality is the end moments are how we in this Western world celebrate everything. We never celebrate the journey, the process before the outcome. I hashtag a lot on social media the phrase, don't wait to celebrate. Hashtag don't wait to celebrate. Because it's kind of my thing that we shouldn't wait to celebrate the life God has given us, even if it's nothing like the thought we were going to have. Nothing like the life we thought we deserved, right? That we're entitled to. Don't wait to celebrate this right here that God has assigned to our lives for a reason. I think ultimately we're called to celebrate two things in the process, in the midst of all of our stories. Number one, I think we are celebrating that we know the ultimate outcome. We know the end of the story right now in the process. And number two, I think we are celebrating and should celebrate that He is with us and that we are with each other. It's very powerful. In all of our stories and sufferings, we aren't celebrating the neatly tied up with a bow ending. We're celebrating God is here and He is protecting us and He is providing for us, and His power is bigger than this. And we are celebrating above everything His presence, that He is here, that He will never leave. Did you like that? I hope you caught that. That was a lot of P words. It's very hard for me to say the P sound and the word P. So it's funny that that's kind of become how I share this is P. That's hard to say. Medium is the message, I guess. And process is huge. But seeing His presence in our process is where we should celebrate. It's very profound. I love alliteration. I like it because it helps you remember things, honestly. And I love that His power is made perfect in our weakness. And that we can boast in that His grace is sufficient. It says in 2 Corinthians 12:9, and that is balm for the soul, that we don't have to do it. We can give up. We can't. Exodus 14:14, I just need to be still and He will fight for me. The comfort in that is so incredible. He is taking care of me. He is protecting me. I will always be under the shadow of His wing. It's some beautiful, beautiful stuff. For a little bonus on the P's, I have a little extra that I like to say a lot of P's in one sentence so you don't forget it. And I like to say that your perspective is your prerogative. So stop throwing a pity party and ponder how to persevere. Did you get that? Want me to say it again? I really like it. Your perspective is your prerogative. So stop throwing a pity party and ponder how to persevere. And that is gold. I love that thought so much, that your perspective, how you think about it, is everything. Stop having a pity party. Please, give up on that one. Instead, stop wasting your time on that one, I should say. It's getting you nowhere. And instead, ponder how to persevere. Ponder, think about it. Christians, and everybody, turn off their brains when suffering comes. Like, I can't even think. I just have to fight or flight. When the reality is, the amygdala, the part of the brain that controls the fight or flight reflex, can in fact grow, be taught to grow. We can train our brains to stay. When it gets really hard, how powerful is that? To not leave. So we can ponder, stay, how to persevere. Perseverance is everything in our stories. I love the deep truth of Hebrews 12, that since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, we can throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles and run with perseverance the race marked out before us. We can fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before Him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and is now seated at the right hand of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful man, so that you will not grow weary or lose heart. And that is our great hope. 5 years after my stroke, when I began that journey of recognizing that, like, my life now had this strange clarity when it was turned upside down, because that upside down kingdom thing was easier to get to or something. So 5 years after the stroke, and I always like to say that, 5 years, not 5 minutes, not 5 days, not 5 weeks, 5 years, I kind of came up for air. And when I could kind of wrap my mind around what God was doing, I, for some reason, decided I wanted to start this Bible study called MORE. Mornings of Redefining Everything. MORE. Because I like an acronym as much as I love alliteration. And in these mornings, I would teach on redefining words. And this was in Culver City, California for years. And it was awesome. I loved it. It meant the world to me. And MORE also was about more. Like, there's more to this world than what we see. It's the unseen that matters most. There's more in the story. Honestly, the first seeds of this new book, Suffer Strong, were born in MORE all those years ago. The byline here, how to survive anything by redefining everything. It's kind of the whole deal. How can we persevere in our hard stories by thinking about them differently? Ultimately, the message of this book and of our lives has become this thought that life defines us. Absolutely. Suffering redefines us. And ultimately, hope refines us. Did you catch that? Life defines us. Suffering redefines us. And ultimately, hope refines us. How comforting is that? One morning at MORE, I shared very vulnerably some really hard stuff that I was going through, and as only the Lord could do it, 4 other women also shared just dramatic and different stories of terrible suffering in their own life. Each one totally different than mine, but each one very specific. So I'm not going to go into it, but financial, relational, dysfunction, emotional stuff, really hard suffering, not my brand. And I recognize, like, interesting, like, all totally different stories of suffering, but all potentially the same story of strength. So different brand of brokenness in all our stories, but the same opportunity to celebrate Jesus and the strength of Jesus in our stories. So, the brokenness brunch was born. Now, the brokenness brunch, alliteration again, was my offering, was, hey, let me call up those 4 gals and invite them over to a brunch at my house where we celebrate not how our lives are wrecked and falling apart. No, not celebrating the problem, but celebrating the God who's with us in the problem. So we toasted our coffee mugs to God being in the middle of our stuff. But you know what that also did for us? Was it gave us eyes to see other stuff happening than our stuff, and how we can all turn to God in everything that we're going through. Recognize My story is not her story, but I'm less afraid as she's less afraid because we serve a God who's bigger than this problem. And it was very powerful. I remember at that brunch I was able to share that, and I think my eyes were in fact open to this, that I had stuff majorly on the outside and still do. I have a lot of external wheelchair stuff. I've got the actual wheelchair, got the messed up hand, the paralyzed face, physical stuff. What's interesting in seeing their stories and thinking through my own story, I realized we all have invisible wheelchairs. We all have so much stuff inside of us that is disabled. The disabilities in us all that are really something I kind of get a pass on. You know, I've got this external wheelchair. You see, people know I've been through a lot. Treat her with care. But nobody sees that when you've got a big old invisible wheelchair inside of you, which, side note, we all do, honestly, every one of us. I made a list of a few of mine for you to help free you up to think about yours. I have major sleep issues and vivid, dangerous night terrors. I have horrific anxiety about my son's emotional and physical well-being. I have a deep fear of rejection. I'm a tragic people pleaser. I have mommy shame for working full-time and traveling so much. I have doubts about being a good mom. I have marital stress. I have had my whole life the fear of being too much, and yet somehow still never enough. And it is deeply debilitating. I feel like I'm dramatic and loud and gonna overwhelm you. And yet I'm also never gonna measure up. And deep down I'm like, are they even gonna like me? Are they automatically gonna hate me? And it is just so messed up, y'all. And I don't know, I think there is such a freedom in seeing, like, that's so wrong. That is so the opposite. And those are invisible wheelchairs, but they are nonetheless stuff that I don't need to be bound by, but instead be freed by. Let me explain. My wheelchair is seen as what the world would call wheelchair bound. You probably heard that, wheelchair bound. Well, I'm screaming a different tune. I'm wheelchair free. And what I mean by that is that I sit in a big wheelchair all the time. But actually that wheelchair is my avenue to freedom. That wheelchair is what enables me to do my life, to go where I want to go, to do what I want to do. The wheelchair is not holding me back, it's helping fuel me, push me forward. And the same is true in all of our disabilities. Similar to me waking up to that reality with my wheelchair, how can we, in all of our disabilities, ponder and recognize, well, this is in my story, and this is in my story, and that is in my story, but how are the avenues that God is using for my freedom? We know Psalm 16:6 is true, that the boundary lines have fallen in pleasant places. Somehow, the stuff in here is seriously good, seriously worth celebrating. So how can I learn to see it, to ponder it, to wake up to it, instead of just wanting to pray it away? I want to bring it in close. And I want to honor the Lord as I champion this stuff that I never would have chosen in a million years. I see so clearly that in this hard place we all find ourselves in, when we can recognize that God has assigned us to this, we can celebrate it. We can rejoice in it because we see God's goodness is here. He's taking care of me. And I choose to be a joy rebel. I choose to rebel joyfully. And honestly, I choose to disrupt the deep lie, and I mean lie, the deep lie, that joy can only be found in a pain-free life. Let me say it again. You get to be a part of disrupting the lie that joy can only be found in a pain-free life.